بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. The author says رحمه الله ويثبت القصاص أيضا في الأطراف والجراحات. And retaliation is also confirmed for limbs and wounds. قال الشافعي said رحمه الله, may Allah have mercy on him, والقصاص فيما دون النفس شيئان. Retaliation concerning what is less than for a life is two things. جرح يستوفى وطرف يقطع. A matched wound and an amputated limb, or a matched wound or an amputated limb. وشرائط وجوب القصاص في الأطراف بعد الشرائط المذكورة في قصاص النفس. نعم. And the conditions or the obligation of retaliation concerning limbs after the conditions mentioned for the retaliation against a life, for taking a life. Retaliation after the conditions mentioned about the what validates retaliation for taking a life are two things. What's that? Well, let's see. Find it real quick here. Bismillah. The retaliation. We're not looking for the dia here. We're looking for the qisas. So this last talk here is about the dia, blood money. Al-qisas. Here's paragraph. Bismillah. Sheikh says, وفي قتل العمد وهو ما كان بقصد عين من وقعت عليه الجناية بما يتلف غالبا جارحا. When it comes to deliberate killing, which is to target the very individual upon whom fell the assault, with what is lethal usually, whether it's what do you say, lethality? It's being lethal is by wounding, such as a sword or a dagger, or so maybe here I said wounding, jarih, so maybe it means cutting, or by something heavy, by something blunt, musaqqal, by something blunt, kasahra, like a boulder, a rock, like one that's big enough to smash a man's head, for example. So there's qisas for such killing. What did he say? In kana al-qatilu ma'suman, if the killed one were inviolable. That's one. It's probably good. If the killed one were inviolable, وكان القاتل ملتزما بالأحكام, and the killer were someone adhering to the rules, an adherent to the rules. That means what we mentioned last time. We'll review there. And for the killer to be a match for the killed one, the conditions for the obligation of retaliation concerning limbs after the conditions mentioned for retaliation for taking a life are two things. There's two more conditions. أحدهما الاشتراك في الاسم الخاص للطرف المقطوع. The first of them is sharing the same particular name concerning a severed limb. Sharing the same particular name. الاشتراك في الاسم الخاص للطرف المقطوع concerning the severed limb. اليمنى باليمنى. So then the right for the right. واليسرى باليسرى. And the left for the left. وحينئذ فلا تقطع يمنى بيسرى ولا عكسه. And accordingly, then a right hand is not severed for a left, nor vice versa. والثاني ألا يكون بأحد الطرفين شلل. The second is that there is not on one side paralysis. There's two sides here, an assailant and an assaulted one. And he clarifies when he says here, فلا تقطع يد أو رجل صحيحة بشلاء. Therefore, a sound hand or foot is not severed for a paralyzed one. وهي التي لا عمل لها. That's the one that doesn't work. أما الشلاء. But as for the paralyzed one, فتقطع بالصحيحة. It is severed for a sound in retaliation or a sound organ, a sound limb على المشهور, according to what's famous. إلا أن يكون عدلان من أهل الخبرة إن الشلاء إذا قطعت لا ينقطع الدم. So that's the right saying. Yani, that's what's correct that's what's famously deemed correct. That's what's famously deemed correct. What does famous mean? Does famous mean is most correct? No, famous means most widespread. So does saying of majority mean is correct? No, saying of majority does not mean is correct. Does famous mean is correct? Also, it does not mean is correct. So he said, according to what's famous, unless two trustworthy experts say that the paralyzed limb will not stop bleeding. If you sever it, it will not stop bleeding. بل تنفتح أفواه العروق ولا تنسد بالحسن. Rather, they say the veins of this paralyzed organ will open up and they will not seal by the hasm. Hasm, let's look in on this topic. حسمه قطعه. وفي الحديث أنه أتي بسارق فقال قطعوه ثم حسموه أي أيكووه بالنار لينقطع الدم. Yes. Meaning, according to those two trustworthy experts, the paralyzed limb, if severed, will not stop bleeding. The veins will not seal by, there should be English word for that, which is to seal the veins by soldering them or frying them, for example. They would, well, I don't know all the ways they might seal the veins. So what I know is the severed limb, what I learned about, I don't know about all the cases. So all I know is the severed limb would be put into boiling oil. So that's why I said fried. And then it's going to seal the veins. What's in the dictionary I just looked in says branding, sealed by branding. That makes sense though, too. Like if there's a severed arm, you have something like piece of metal, a round piece of metal that's heated, and then then you just seal it this way. So anyway, according to two trustworthy experts, the veins won't seal. Then this paralyzed limb will not be amputated. Now look here. Quick benefit. Now we just got an idea about something maybe we never heard of before, which is that a person could have paralyzed limb, and then if it gets cut, the veins won't seal. And then he could keep bleeding. Okay. What does that do for you? Increase your knowledge. That's why they say when you have fiqh gives you experience before experience. When you learn fiqh, you just learn so many things, so many things. Many cases. He says, وَجُمْلَةُ ذَلِكَ أَنَّ الْقِصَاصَ يَجِبُ فِيمَا دُونَ النَّفْسِ مِنَ الْجُرُوحِ وَالْأَعْضَاءِ. And the synopsis of that is that retaliation is obligatory for less than a life concerning wounds, and possibly wound here, what I'm translating as wound is gash, and al-a'dha, and for organs. لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, because of what God said, exalted is He. وَكَتَبْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ فِيهَا أَنَّ النَّفْسَ بِالنَّفْسِ وَالْعَيْنَ بِالْعَيْنِ إِلَى قَوْلِهِ وَالْجُرُوحَ قِصَاص. 45th ayah of Surah Al-Ma'idah, which means we ordained on the children of Israel in the Torah that a life is taken for a life, and there is an eye for an eye, etc., until the ayah says, and for wounds or possibly gashes, there is retaliation. That's revealed about the children of Israel. How that's a proof for us? Because there's a rule. When we are informed about the law of a previous prophet, without any news of that law being abrogated, then we're going to deem it as our law too. So this here, even though that was on the children of Israel and revealed in the Torah, was not abrogated. Not here. Yeah, and it's not abrogated. That's what you say to a Wahhabi when you bring him the ayah about good innovations. وَجَعَلْنَا فِي قُلُوبِ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ رَأْفَةً وَرَحْمَةً وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً ابْتَدَعُوهَا. And the monasticism that they innovated, those followers of Jesus. Wahhabi might say to you, that's abrogated. So we're going to say to him, it's not abrogated. The author says, وَلِأَنَّ الْقِصَاصَ فِي النَّفْسِ إِنَّمَا جُعِلَ لِحِفْظِ النَّفْسِ. And because retaliation for killing is merely sanctioned for the preservation of life. وَهَذَا مَوْجُودٌ فِي مَا دُونَ النَّفْسِ. And this point applies to what is less than life also, less than killing. This same principle, this same point, this same reasoning is applicable to what is less than killing. إذا ثبت هذا فكل شخصين جرى القصاص بينهما في النفس جرى القصاص بينهما فيما دون النفس. Now, if this is settled, then any two people between whom there is retaliation for killing, then there is also retaliation applicable between them for less than killing. فتقطع يد الحر المسلم بيد الحر المسلم. And therefore, the hand of a Muslim freeman is amputated for the hand of a Muslim freeman. ويد المرأة بيد المرأة. And the hand of a woman is amputated for the hand of a woman. وهذا إجماع. This is a consensus. وتقطع يد المرأة بيد الرجل. And a woman's hand is severed for a man's hand. ويد الرجل بيد المرأة. And a man's hand is severed for a woman's hand. ويد العبد بيد الحر. And the slave's hand is severed for freeman's hand. والعبد عندنا and for a slave's hand. And for a slave. And the hand of this slave is severed for the hand of a freeman or a slave. عندنا, according to us. وبه قال مالك وأحمد. And that's what Malik and Ahmed said. رحمهم الله. May Allah have mercy on both of them. وإن اشترك جماعة في إبانة عضو. And if a group participated in severing an organ, أو جراحة, or in wounding, or possibly gashing, gashing in particular kind of wound, يثبت بها القصاص. Retaliation is still confirmed. وَلَمْ يَتَمَيَّزْ فِعْلُ بَعْضِهِمْ عَنْ بَعْضٍ. And then no one's action will be distinguished from another's. Like, wouldn't be said, well, I only held him down. He's the one who's cut his hand off, for example. مثل أن أجرى جماعة سيفا في أيديهم على يد رجل. Oh, رجله. Like if a group made a sword in their hands, run over a man's hand or foot, فقطعوها, and then they severed it. أو على رأسه فأوضحوه, أي جعلوا فيه شجة يبدو منها بياض العظم. Or so they severed it, or they made it run over his head, and they scalped him, meaning they cut him in such a way that the whiteness of the bone appeared. قطعت يد كل واحد منهم وأوضح كل واحد منهم. Then the hand of each one of them would be severed, and each one of them would be scalped. وَبِهِ قَالَ رَبِيعَةُ وَمَالِكٌ وَأَحْمَدُ. And that's the position taken by Rabi'ah and Malik and Ahmad. وَيَجِبُ الْقِصَاصُ فِيمَا دُونَ النَّفْسِ فِي شَيْئَيْنِ. And retaliation for less than a life is due for two things. الجروح والأعضاء, the wounds, or possibly the gashes, and the limbs. والجروح ضربان, the wounds or gashes are two types. جروح في الرأس والوجه, وجروح فيما سواهما من البدن. Wounds to the head and face, and wounds to anything else of the body. Those are the two types. فأما الجروح في الرأس والوجه. Now concerning the wounds to the head and the face. فتسمى الشجاج. So as for the wounds to the head and face, they are called ash-shijaj. So I don't have the translations available right now. And these are probably in Abu Shuja. Anyway, Yani, inshallah, maybe another time we'll look. I don't want to stop to look these up now. Shijaj is what? Wounds to the head or face. Qala Shafi'i, rahimahullah. Ash-Shafi'i, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, Hiya ashur. There are 10 of them. Awwaluha al-harisah. The first of them is the harisah. وهي التي تكشط الجلد كشطا لا يدمي. That's a scratch. The first one is a scratch. So the title that it falls under, if it's true to the title under which it falls, which is juruh, then a scratch is a wound. Yeah, if you want to translate like that, if we're going to commit to the translations in that way. That's a scratch, al-harisah, because he defined it. وَهِيَ الَّتِي تَكْشِطُ الْجِلْدَ كَشْطًا. That's the one that merely scratches the skin. La yudmi, doesn't bleed. So it's a scratch. Scratch doesn't bleed. Maybe a scrape. I don't think scrape has to bleed also. Yeah, and it may be harisah means scrape here. And then here, kashat here means scratch. So that's how to define it. We want to define something by using a different word. So if these work like that, then we'd say they are 10. The first of them is the scrape, which is the one in which the skin is merely scratched. It does not bleed. Some scratches are very severe though. وَمِنْهُ يُقَالُ حَرَصَ الْقَصَّارُ ثَوْبٍ إِذَا كَشَطَ دَرَنَهُ وَوَسَخَهُ. An example of this, Yani, or the usage of such a word, is that you'd say the tailor scratched the clothing. He scratched at it. Or Yani, something like that. إِذَا كَشَطَ دَرَنَهُ. Yani, if you have, for example, Hans Weir or translated dictionary, you want to say what they mention about these words while I'm translating, that's fine. Or we can do it another time, next time, inshallah. So, حرص القصار الثوب إذا كشط درنه ووسخه. This is what you say, حرص الثوب. Because that's why it's called harisah. Meaning that this tailor, or Qassar, I think means tailor here. He scratched the dirt away from the clothing. وَبَعْدَهَا الدَّامِيَةِ. And after that first wound is the damiyah. So what jumps to my mind is bleeder. Or if you want to say more colloquially, leaker. This is leaking. Yeah, and his blood's flowing. وَهِيَ الَّتِي كَشَطَتِ الْجِلْدِ وَخَرَجَ مِنْهَا الدَّمُ. That's the one that scratched the skin and the blood came out. وَبَعْدَهَا الْبَوْضِعَةِ. Then after that is the bawdi'ah. وَهِيَ الَّتِي تَبْضَعُ اللَّحْمَ أي تشقه بعد الجلد. After that is the bawdi'ah. So it's a cut. I don't know if this has better translation than cut. He says the bawdi'ah meaning tashuquhu al-lahm. It splits these flesh under the skin. Splits the flesh under the skin, gets to under the epidermis. goes below the epidermis and opens, yani separates it, splits it, parts it, parts the flesh beneath the skin. وبعدها المتلاحمة. After that is al-mutalahima. This one seems to me to mean gash. وهي التي تنزل في اللحم. That's the one that goes into the flesh, that goes down into the flesh. تنزل في اللحم, descends into the flesh. وبعدها السمحاق. After that is the السمحاق. وهي التي وصلت إلى جلدة رقيقة بين اللحم والعظم. That's the one that reaches a membrane between the flesh and the bone. That's the one that reaches a membrane between the flesh and the bone. That's definitely a gash, like a deeper gash, a deep gash. So I don't know if it has better words. وتسمى تلك الجلدة السمحاق. That membrane is called السمحاق. Yani, so the membrane is called as-simhaq. So the wounding is named after that, as-simhaq. And the word I'm translating as membrane is this, jildatun raqiqa, fine skin, fine skin. So like membrane. وَبَعْدَهَا الْمُوضِحَةِ. And after that is the مُوضِحَةِ. وهي التي أوضحت وهي التي أوضحت العظم. The مُوضِحَةِ, يعني the exposer, that's the one that exposes the bone. وكشفت عنه. Yes, it exposes the bone. It uncovers the bone. وبعدها الهاشمة. After that is the hashima. وهي التي هشمت العظم. I think means break. Break the bone or shatter the bone. Why Hashim was called the Hashim? Because he used to break the bread. Let me look here in the dictionary. Al-hashmu kasru shay'il yabis. Hashem is breaking something dry. So that means snapping it. Snapping it. يقال هشم التثريب أي ثرده وبابه ضرب ومنه سمي هاشم بن عبد مناف واسمه عمرو والهشيم من النبات اليابس المتكسر والشجرة البالية يأخذها الحاطب كيف يشاء. والشجرة اليابسة البالية والشجرة البالية يأخذها الحاطب كيف يشاء. Okay. So snap something because brittle or dry. That's literally. So here we're talking about a particular kind of wound. Al-hashima وهي التي هشمت العظم. So that's the one that breaks the bone or snaps the bone. وبعدها المنقلة. After that is the relocator. Ya Allah. قال الشيخ أبو حامد. After that, Sheikh Abu Hamid said, وَلَهَا تَعْوِيلًا. This name has two explanations. أحدهما أن تنقل العظم من موضع إلى موضع. One of them is that the bone moves from one place to another. والثاني أنه في تداويه لا بد من إخراج شيء من العظم منه. And the second way to explain this, the name of this wound, is that to treat it, it is necessary to remove some of the bone. Subhanallah. وَبَعْدَهَا الْمَأْمُونَةِ. After that is the sorry. وبعدها المأمومة. After that is the مأمومة. وتسمى العامة. It's also called the عامة. وهي التي قطعت العظم وبلغت إلى قشرة رقيقة فوق الدماغ. That's the wound that cuts the bone or severs the bone and reaches to a membrane over the brain. وبعدها الدامغة, and after that is the دامغة. So what's the مأمومة? I don't know how to translate that. These don't necessarily have some translations. Yani from fiqh and Arabic language. فوق الدماغ. وبعدها الدامغة. After that is the دامغة. وهي التي بلغت إلى الدماغ. يعني the brain toucher. That's the one that reaches the brain. The brain buster. إذا ثبت هذا, now if this is settled, فإن الشافعي رحمه الله قال في الأم. Then know that الشافعي, may Allah have mercy on him, said in Al-Umm, لا قصاص فيما دون الموضحة من الشجاج. He said in Al-Umm that there is no retaliation for anything less than the mudiha amongst the shijaj. So what's the mudiha? Mudiha is the one that exposes the bone. Mudiha exposes the bone. Starts here. What's above that? Yani above that means less than that. Yani didn't reach that level yet. The scratch or the scrape doesn't reach that level. The cut, the gash. So the scrape is the hadisa. If you're studying fiqh in proper environment, you're going to definitely have to memorize these. All these names come on the test and their definitions. The scrape is the hadisa. The cut is the baldi'ah. These are just placeholders for now, these names. The gash is the mutalahima. That's 3. Then there's simhaq. Simhaq reaches the membrane between the flesh and the bone. So there's no qisas in any of that. Qisas, according to Shafi'i, starts at mubiha, and then whatever's after that. Gets worse from there. انتهى. End quote. The end of the quote of الشافعي. لأن المماثلة فيها ممكنة من غير حيث أي جور وظلم. Because to match the wound in these cases of retaliation is possible. Yani, they are able to actually measure the wound and then to inflict a wound of equal measure on the assailant without injustice. فَتُقَدَّرُ الْمُوضِحَةُ بِالطُّولِ وَالْعَرْضِ. And so the mudiha, that's the one that exposes the bone, it will be measured in length and width. وَيُعَلَّمُ عَلَيْهِ بِالْخَيْطِ سَوَادٍ, and then it will be traced. It will trace it. وَلَا يُعْتَبَرُ الْعُمْقِ, and the depth is disregarded because it has to reach the bone. Allahu Akbar. وَأَمَّا الْهَاشِمَةُ وَالْمُنَقِّلَةُ وَالْمَأْمُومَةُ. Concerning the hashima and the munaqila and the ma'muma, these wounds, hashima, munaqila, and ma'muma, فله أن يقتص في الموضحة منها, then one has the right to retaliation concerning when any of those results in a wound that's called موضحة, وليس له أن يقتص فيما زاد عليها, and one does not have the right to retaliation for what is more than that, and contrary to what one might imagine. If he can retaliate for this, would he not be able to retaliate for more? Not for more than that. لأن كسر العظم لا يمكن المماثلة فيه, because bone breaking is not possibly replicated equally. لأنه يخاف فيه الحيف وإتلاف النفس, because attempting to break the bone equally, it is feared that this will result in injustice, wrongdoing, and also the loss of life. But what are these? The hashima, the munakila, and the ma'muma. We were tracking those, so let's see. Where are those? So let's see. There are, starting here at this paragraph, retaliation is obligatory for less than a life. For less than a life means for less than killing. There's retaliation for murder, and there's retaliation for less than murder in two things. In wounds, and maybe that means gashes, and a'da, yani limbs. And the wounds or the gashes are two kinds. Wounds in the head, and wounds, in the head and face. Wounds in the head and face. And wounds somewhere else on the body. Wounds on the head and face, and wounds somewhere else in the body. So two different categories here. As for the wounds in the head and the face, they are called shijaj. So there's vocabulary here. If we're not strong in this chapter, then we are lacking the vocabulary here. So the one who wants to take advantage is now going to take good notes, put all his vocabulary together, pull this chapter apart, and put it back together again. What's shijaj? Shijaj is a wound to the head or face. As Shafi'i said, there's 10 of those. There's the harisah, so we said scrape. The harisah is what scratches the skin without bleeding. So that's one. Then there's the damiyah. That's two. Damiyah, yani, if you want, the bleeder, a bleeder. From damiyah, or bleeding. If it refers to the wound itself, a bleeding one. That's what it's supposed to be referring to, the wound. The juruh. Amal juruh, they are called, if they are from the head or the face, called shijaj. The first of them is the scrape. That's the wound itself. The next one is the bleeding one, the bleeding wound. It is a scratch or scrape, but blood comes out. Then after that is number 3, the baldi'ah. Have here a cut. This is the one that splits the skin. Then after that, there is al-mutalahima. I have here a gash. So gash is more than a cut. This is the one that goes down into the flesh. Then there is the simhaq. This is the one that reaches the membrane between the flesh and the bone. So, I mean, it may be a deep gash. Deep gash. He says, then after that is the mudihah, which is bone exposure. The bone exposure. This is the one that exposes the bone. Then after that is the hashima, the breaker or snapper. This is the bone snapper. Then after that is the munaqila. This is the bone shifter. So bone exposer is number 6. Bone snapper is number 7. Bone shifter is number 8. Sheikh Abu Hamid. Okay, that's fine. We don't have to read that part there. We're just reviewing real quick. Then after that is al-ma'muma. The ma'muma is the bone cutter that reaches the membrane of the brain membrane. The bone cutter that reaches the brain membrane. So, qata'at al-'azm. Qata' is cutting, severing. So, it's going to put here bone cutter. That is number 9. And after that is the damigha, which is the one that reaches the brain. So perhaps one might say the brain buster. Okay, so we have some words to work with now. Crude translations, just to make it a little bit more relatable. So we have the scrape and the bleeder, the bleeding wound. The cut, the gash, and the deep gash. So scrape is 1. The bleeder is 2. Yeah, the gash is 3. Well, the cut is 3. And the gash is 4. And the deep gash is 5. The bone exposer is 6. The bone snapper is 7. The bone shifter is 8. The bone cutter is 9. And the brain buster is 10. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Now I am curious. Wait, before my curiosity, let's see what the words that we already read mean. So, the Sheikh says, this is where we started today. As for the hashima, the bone snapper, and the munaqila, the bone shifter, and the ma'muna, which is the bone cutter. As if ma'muna, though, is skull cutter or skull breaker. So munaqila is bone shifter, yes. Hashima reaches bone. Munaqila shifts the bone, relocates it. Ma'muna reaches the brain membrane. So let's say here, skull cracker for number 9. Oops. Ma'muna is skullcracker. And number 10 is the brain buster. So he says, as for the Hashima, the bone snapper, and the Munakila, the bone shifter, and the Ma'muna, the skull cracker, one is allowed to, one has a right to retaliation if it's a mudiha. And what's mudiha? Mudiha is the bone exposer. Bone exposer, mudiha. So he's saying, as for the bone snapper and the bone shifter and the skull cracker, one has a right to retaliation when any of those are bone exposers. And he does not have a right to retaliation for what is more than that. Because breaking a bone cannot be equalized. And so, Sheikh says, rahimahullah, وَأَمَّا الْجِرَاحَةِ. Now as for the wound, فِي غَيْرِ الرَّأْسِ وَالْوَجْهِ, in other than the head and face, فَيُنْظَرُ فِيهَا, it will be investigated. فَإِنْ وَصَلَتْ إِلَى عَظْمٍ وَجَبَ فِيهَا الْقِصَاص. If it reaches a bone, then retaliation is obligatory for it. لأنه يمكن القصاص فيها من غير حيف. Because it's possible to retaliate equally without injustice. فهي كالموضحة في الرأس والوجه. So this is like the bone exposer in the head and the face. The موضحة, bone exposer. وإن كانت الجراحة جائفة أو كسرت عظما لم يجب القصاص فيها لأنه لا يمكن المماثلة فيها ويخاف فيها الحيف. As for the now if the wound were جائفة, I'm not sure what that means, or كسرت عظما, or this wound broke a bone, لم يجب القصاص فيها, then it's not, then there is no retaliation obligatory for that. لأنه لا يمكن المماثلة فيها, because it's not possible to do it equally. ويخاف فيها الحيف, and injustice is feared there. وأما الأطراف, and as for the limbs, فيجب فيها القصاص في كل ما ينتهي منها إلى مفصل. As for the limbs, retaliation is obligatory for anything that reaches a joint. فتؤخذ العين بالعين. يعني مفصل, I translate it as joint. Maybe means segment. فَتُؤْخَذُ الْعَيْنُ بِالْعَيْنِ, and so an eye will be taken for an eye. لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, because of what God said, exalted is He, وَالْعَيْنُ بِالْعَيْنِ, and an eye for an eye. وَلِأَنَّهَا تَنْتَهِي إِلَى مَفْصِلٍ, and because the eye ends at a segment or joint, if that works there. I don't think so. Maybe the mafsil of the ayn is a socket because it has socket. Maybe that's the socket when it comes to the eye. فكل عضو أخذ أي قطع من مفصل. And so any organ that is taken or cut, severed from a segment, يعني a joint or a socket. Yeah, a joint is socket. Let's see something. Looking up the word socket. A natural or artificial hollow into which something fits or in which something revolves. Yeah. Let me see something. Is a joint a socket? I believe so. This is Google here. Yes. In the context of a joint in the human body, a socket refers to the concave depression in a bone that fits with the rounded head of another bone, forming a ball and socket joint. This type of joint allows for a wide range of movements, including flexation, extension, abduction, adduction, and rotation. Here's a more detailed explanation. You have ball and socket joint. So I want to ask another question. Is the eye socket a joint? Google says no. The eye socket, also known as the orbit, is not a joint. It's a bone cavity in the skull that surrounds and protects the eyeball. The eye socket is formed by a series of 7 bones, not by a joint connecting different bones. Okay. So eye socket is not a joint, but a joint is a socket. So let's say socket. So as for the limbs, the atraf, there is retaliation for anything that ends at a socket. And then the first thing Sheikh mentioned was an eye. فَتُؤْخَذُ الْعَيْنُ بِالْعَيْنِ. So an eye is taken for an eye. And فَكُلُّ عُضْوٍ أُخِذَ أَيْ قُطِعَ مِنْ مَفْصِلٍ. So every or any organ taken, meaning cut, severed from a socket, كَمِرْفَقْ, like an elbow, وَقُوع, and a wrist, فَفِيهِ الْقِصَاص. Then there is retaliation for it. وَمَا لَا مَفْصِلَ لَهُ لَا قِصَاصَ فِيهِ. And anything that doesn't have a socket, that there's no retaliation for it. إذا ثبت هذا فتؤخذ العين الصحيحة بالصحيحة. If this is settled, then a sound eye is taken for a sound eye. والقائمة بالقائمة وهي التي ذهب ضوءها وبقيت حدقتها. And the eye that's called qa'ima, it would be taken for an eye that's called qa'ima, which is the one that lost its light, the eye that lost its light, but the pupil remains. So that's just me translating literally here. وَلَا تُؤْخَذُ الصَّحِيحَةُ بِالْقَائِمَةِ. But a sound eye is not taken for a qa'ima eye. لأنه يأخذ أكثر من حقه, because then one would be taking more than his right. ويجوز أن تؤخذ القائمة بالصحيحة. So look at that. When someone assaulted another person and the religion gave the victim the right to retaliation, whenever the victim was not allowed, whenever the victim was not able to get back exactly what was done, then he wasn't allowed. That's very different from what the kuffar would do. The kuffar would say, so you wronged this person, now we're going to wrong you 20 times more. And for a long, long, long time. وَيَجُوزُ أَن تُؤْخَذَ الْقَائِمَةُ بِالصَّحِيحَةِ. And it is valid, though, to take a qa'ima eye for a sound one, لِأَنَّهُ يَأْخُذُ أَقَلَّ مِنْ حَقِّهِ. Because this one is taking less than his right. باختياره willingly. He's willing to take less than is right. ويؤخذ الجفن ويؤخذ الجفن بالجفن, and an eyelid is taken for an eyelid. والأنف بالأنف, and a nose for a nose. والمنخر بالمنخر, and a nostril for a nostril. وهو ثقب الأنف. The nostril is the hole of the nose. والحاجز بينهما بالحاجز, and the, what they call that, the septum, right? Is that when the people, like some women these days, they get what some people call bull ring in their nose. It's in the middle. The septum, I believe that's what that is. Let me see. Septum, a partition separating two chambers, such as between the nostrils or the chambers of the heart. Okay. So, وَالْحَاجِزُ بَيْنَهُمَا بِالْحَاجِز. And a septum is taken for a septum. وَالْأُذُنُ بِالْأُذُنِ, and an ear for an ear. وَيَجِبُ فِي الشَّفَتَيْنِ الْقَوَدِ, and there is for two lips, qawad. What's the difference between qawad and qisas? Now I'm looking in Al-Mukhtar. Opened right up to Qaf. MashaAllah. Wal-qawad al-qisas. The qawad is the qisas. That's what he says here. وأقاد القاتل بالقتيل قتله به, يقال أقاده السلطان من أخيه. Okay. And since I'm here, let's look up قصاص. والقصاص القود. القصاص is the قود, so it's the retaliation. وقد أقص الأمير فلانا من فلان إذا اقتص له منه فجرحه مثل جرحه أو قتله قودا. So, ويجب في الشفتين القود, and obligatory for two lips is retaliation. وإن جنى على رأسه فذهب عقله أو شمه أو سمعه أو ذوقه. And if one assaulted another's head, or in his head, or on his head, if someone assaulted another on his head, and thereby that victim's mind lost his mind, took a blow to the head and lost his mind, or he lost his ability to smell, or to hear, or to taste, أو نكاحه, or his libido, يعني his libido, أو إنزاله, or he became unable to ejaculate, لم يجب فيها القصاص. There is no retaliation for this, لأن هذه الأشياء ليست في موضع الجناية, because all of these after effects are not in the place, they're not in the location of the actual assault. فيمكن القصاص فيها, and then it would be possible, had they been in the same place as the assault, then it would have been possible to retaliate. وإن قلع سن من قد أفغر, أي نبتت أسنانه بعد السقوط, قلع سنه. And if someone pulled out the tooth of another who got his adult teeth, قد أفغر. أفغر meaning his teeth grew after they fell out. So, the only thing I know is that your teeth fall out when you're a kid. And then you get some new teeth, and then they don't get knocked out, they're going to stay there. They call that the adult teeth, unless it has another name. And so, then this one will get his tooth pulled. وإن كان المقلوع سنه لم يصغر وقف حتى يصغر. And if the one who did the assault, if the assailant does not yet have adult teeth, then he is postponed until he gets adult teeth. So does this imply that the assailant was a child? And Sheikh's not saying that here. Would an adult not yet have adult teeth and he still has baby teeth? I personally never heard of it. Is my translation faulty here? Possibly. I don't know a lot about teeth. But I mean, that's what I know. I don't think the teeth fall out only one time when you're a child. So if there's something else, let me know. And then I'm going to wonder about my own case. فينظر هل تنبت سنه بعد ذلك أو لا. So then it will be investigated. Would this person's tooth grow back after that or not? So hold on. وإن كان المقلوع سنه لم يصغر. If the one whose tooth was pulled out does not yet have adult teeth, وقف حتى يصغر. Then there will be postponement until he gets adult teeth. فينظر هل تنبت سنه بعد ذلك أو لا. So it would be seen. Will his tooth grow back after that or not? وتؤخذ السن الكبيرة بالصغيرة والصغيرة بالكبيرة. And a big tooth is taken for a small tooth. And a small tooth is taken for a big tooth. ولا يؤخذ سن صحيح بمكسور. But a sound tooth is not taken for a broken tooth. لأنه يأخذ أكثر من حقه. Because then one would be taking more than his right. ويؤخذ المكسور بالصحيح. But a broken tooth can be taken for a sound one. لأنه أنقص من حقه. Because the broken tooth is less than the sound tooth. وتقطع الكف بالكف. And a hand is severed for a hand. والإصبع بالإصبع. And a finger for finger. والأنملة بالأنملة. And a finger segment for a finger segment. Let's see if that has a name. What is the name of the segments of a finger? Phalanges, yes. Segments of a finger are called phalanges. Specifically, each finger except the thumb, which has two, has 3 phalanges. Yes, the thumb has, they say, 2 phalanges. So he says, وَالْأَنْمُلَةُ بِالْأَنْمُلَةِ. And a phalange for a phalange. وَتُؤْخَذُ الْأَلْيَتَانِ بِالْأَلْيَتَانِ. And the 2 cheeks of the buttocks. The 2 buttock cheeks are taken for 2 buttock cheeks. وهما الناتئتان بين الظهر والفخذ. Those, that's what some people will call gluteus maximus. That's what protrudes. The 2 protruding parts between the back and the thigh. ويقطع الذكر بالذكر. And a penis is severed for penis. بقوله تعالى. Because God exalted as He said, وَالْجُرُوحَ قِصَاص. And there is retaliation for wounds. ولأنه عضو ينتهي إلى مفصل. And because that is an organ that ends at a socket. So we need to know what's the definition of mafsil very clearly here. We cannot assume that the way modern doctors say things is exactly going to match these things. A lot of times they don't match equally. فوجب فيه القصاص. Therefore, there is retaliation for it. إذا ثبت هذا, and if this is settled, فيقطع ذكر الرجل بذكر الصبي. Then a man's penis will be severed for a child's penis. ويقطع ذكر الشاب بذكر الشيخ. And a young man's penis is severed for an old man's. قال الشافعي. الشافعي said, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on him, ويقاد ذكر الأغلف أي الذي لم يختن بذكر المختون. The penis of the uncircumcised one takes retaliation for the penis of the circumcised one. كما تقطع اليد السمينة باليد المهزولة. Just as a fat hand is severed for an emaciated hand. ولأن تلك الجلدة مستحقة للقطع. And because that foreskin, it deserves to be severed anyway. فلا تمنع من القصاص. Therefore, it will not prevent retaliation. Its presence doesn't prevent retaliation. وإن قطع أنثييه اقتص منه. And if someone severed the testicles of another, then there's retaliation. وكل عضو وجب فيه القصاص. Every limb for which retaliation is obligatory, فإنه يجب فيه. وإن اختلف العضوان في الصغر والكبر والصحة والمرض والسمن والهزال, then obligatory it would be even though the two organs, meaning the victimized limb and the limb that is receiving the retaliation, even if they differ in youth or smallness and or age or bigness, and in health or sickness or fatness or emaciation, thinness. لأن لو اعتبرنا هذه الأشياء لشق وضاق. Because had we given regard to these things, then the situation, the issue would have become too difficult. فسقط اعتباره, and therefore regard for it is irrelevant. It is deemed regardless, these matters here. كما سقط اعتبار ذلك في النفس. Just like that's regardless concerning life itself. Yani, what if a fat person killed a skinny person or a skinny person killed a fat person? What we say? You cannot execute him because he's fatter than the other one. So you wouldn't say that. ولا يؤخذ الجفن الأعلى بالجفن الأسفل. And an upper eyelid is not taken for a lower eyelid وَلَا الْأَسْفَلُ بِالْأَعْلَى, nor a lower one for an upper one. وَكَذَلِكَ الشَّفَتَانِ مِثْلُهُ, and likewise the lips have the same judgment. وَلَا تُؤْخَذُ سِنٌّ بِسِنٍّ غَيْرِهَا, and a tooth is not taken for a different kind of tooth. وَلَا إِصْبَعٌ بِإِصْبَعٍ غَيْرِهَا, nor a finger for a different kind of finger or a different finger. وَلَا أَنْمُلَةٌ وَلَا أَنْمُلَةٌ بِأَنْمُلَةٍ, nor a phalange. Am I saying that right? Phalange? Phalange? The segment of the finger. Let me know if I'm saying that right, please. Nor is one of those finger segments taken for a different one. كما لا تؤخذ نفس بجناية نفس غيرها, just as life is not taken for someone else's killing. Just as a life would not be taken for someone else's killing. وَلَا يُؤْخَذُ ذَلِكَ وَإِنْ رَضِيَ الْجَانِي, this will not be taken even if the assailant accepts. وَالْمَجْنِيُّ عَلَيْهِ, and also the assaulted one, the victim. Even by the agreement of the assailant and the victim, this is not done. وَكَذَلِكَ إِذَا رَضِيَ الْجَانِي بأن يؤخذ العضو الكامل بالناقص والصحيح بالأشل. And likewise, if the assailant accepts for a complete limb to be taken for a deficient limb, or for a healthy limb to be taken for a paralyzed one. Paralyzed is different from what we were mentioning. We said skinny or fat or young or old. Paralyzed does not fit there. Lam yajuz, it's not permissible. Yani his wish is not fulfilled here. لأن الدماء لا تستباح بالإباحة, because blood spill is not permitted by permission. Because blood spill is not permitted by permission. Subhanallah. Whenever I learn a rule like these rules, I just say to my scholars, I just say to myself, what do those scholars know? How many rules are there? Subhanallah. لا تستباح بالإباحة. Allahu Akbar. How many reasonings do they know for rules? Those reasonings have wisdom in them, and they have intelligence in them. So that's the blessing of this religious knowledge. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. وَمَنْ قَطَعَ عُضْوَ مُسْلِمٍ ثُمَّ قَتَلَهُ, and anyone who severed a Muslim's limb and then killed him, كَانَ لِوَرَثَتِهِ قَطْعُ عُضْوِهِ ثُمَّ قَتْلُهُ, then his heirs have the right to first sever his limb and then to kill him. وَبِهِ قَالَ أَبُو حَنِيفَةَ, and that's what Abu Hanifa said. Yani, he agrees with that. دَلِيلُنَا قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى, our evidence is the saying of the Exalted. فَمَنِ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. Anyone who transgresses against you, believers, then transgress against him as he transgressed against you. But you know there's a figure of speech there, because when you hit him back, that's not a transgression. It was only called transgression here because of its resembling the first act, because of its mirroring the first act, but it's not an injustice. The transgression, which was the first hit, is injustice, and the second hit, which is the hit back, is not an injustice, so it's not a real transgression. So that's a figure of speech. That's another example for you can give to a Wahhabi when he tells you that there is no majaz in the Quran. Yeah, let's stop here. Wallahu a'lam.